and welcome. I'm Raziel, and Fridays usually for more fun and less serious videos, though some people do take them kind of serious. They're a bit tongue-in-cheek, so let's do a bit clickbaity today with a top 5, or it's not even a top 5, it's just my 5 favourite factions from different games. And to be honest with you, I'm probably going to be repeating myself for the reasons for these factions, because I'm consistent, if nothing else. So, the thing is, I'm going to try and cover... I'm not going to repeat the same game twice. It's not going to be like... I could just go through the entire Wild West Exodus and say, these are my 5 favourite factions for Wild West Exodus. However, to make things a little bit different, a little bit fresh, I will go through different games. And most of these factions I actually do play, but it is solely based on the models themselves and some lore maybe. So let's begin with Warhammer 40k. Warhammer 40k, my favourite faction for them, has always been for the past 30 years the Eldar, or the Eldari, with a craft world Eldar. First things first, it has the most diverse range in any army I've seen. There are so many different units. You have your Warp Spiders, Swooping Hawks, Banshees, Striking Scorpions, Fire Dragons, my favourite, Wraith Lords, Wraith Knights, Blade Guard, you name it. There's so many different factions, and that's what makes them my favourite by far. The second part is actually the lore and how it's kind of misconstrued. The Eldari, the Craftworld Eldari in particular, would be considered conspiracy theorists. They weren't actually, part of the whole SA, murder, all of that. They were warning people about this, and they finally escaped within the last minutes of Slanesh's birth. So that's why they exist. They were conspiracy theorists, and they have some fantastic looking models. Anyway, next one is for Judge Dredd. Now, Judge Dredd, with a game which is absolutely fun, and because of the models, it's of course for judges. That faction is my absolute favourite. They are such nice looking models. They're very iconic, and they fit with the comic so well. You can tell that the people made it love the comic. And you can see it in the models, especially with the judges. And the fact that you can actually see Dredd on his badge and Sai on Anderson's badge, my 2 favourite characters in the comics, I think this is why I love them the most. Plus, being a big fan of comics, why wouldn't I play as the judges? I love the comics, and I get to play as my favourite characters in the comic. So one of my favourite comics, and I get to use my favourite characters from said comics. It's quite simple, it's quite easy, very, very easy. Next is the Conquest. Now, Conquest has some fantastic models for every faction. It was really hard to put this one. I want to say Radron because dinosaurs, but I'm not a big fan of orcs. So Radron was kind of a close one, but it's really stuck between the Old Dominion and the Spires. Now, the Spires are basically space elves, but even though I love my elves, I've got to give it to the Old Dominion. The fact it can be summed up so simply as undead Romans with some really creepy walking mausoleums. And you're not, when you're golf when you take your mausoleum for a walk. So yeah, I love the models from Conquest. I think they're absolutely lovely, and the Old Dominion really have a fun story and a fun look. Basically, their god died, and instead of actually completely biffing it, they decided to bring it back to life. They have the Fallen Divinity model, which is absolutely fantastic looking, and the Undead Roman angle, again, is so fun. You get some really cool models with this one. It's a twist on the undead, which we see so common, which is usually knights or mummies, and they've done a fantastic job on it. Next is Kings of War, another game that I found very difficult to actually choose a single faction for. And I've got to go with the Goblins. Look, I love the Abyssal Dwarves and I really want to collect them, but the Goblins, damn, they are just fun looking models. They are cheeky, they look like the cartoony, fun goblins that we're all very familiar with all types of fantasy game. So yeah, that is the reason I love the Goblins. And plus I get to say Goblin Whiz and giggle like a little girl every time I see it. Goblin Whiz, because it sounds a little bit rude and a little bit risque, because whiz also means piss in the UK. Take a whiz, take a piss, and that's your leader. And they do have some really cool models as well. One is the Goblin Whiz himself. It's a very cool model. He's looked like he's doing the Kamehameha or the Fireball from Street Fighter 2. It's a really fun pose, and again, and the lore is fun as well. It's just fun. It's a fun army, and it's always cool to have this ridiculously fun army. Finally, it's Wild West Exodus, and if you know me by now, you know exactly what's coming. It's a very close tie again, like Conquest, but it goes to the warrior nations. One, their lore. They are basically trying to fight for their land, but they're using magic to help them, which is super cool. And all the models look really cool. Again, Wild West Exodus and Warcradle make the best models, bar none. I will die on that hill when it comes to this. Wild West Exodus Warcradle makes the best models, and it definitely applies to the warrior nations. It also includes my favourite model of all time, which is the legendary Walks Looking, which is a fantastic looking model and was an absolute blast of paint. And finally, of course, it's about the diversity of the warriors nations. They're not all humans. That makes them really cool. You have some people with wings, you have werewolves, giant animals, people riding birds. You've got a whole range of different models. I would even say it might be even more varied than the actual Eldar. Because, like I said, you've got things like the Death from Above posse, which is a bunch of winged warrior nations. You have the Tribal Retribution, which is a very basic human choice. You have the Hour of the Wolf posse, which is, you have some wolves, some werewolves, and some humans. Or you can make an Hour of a Wolf posse solely out of wolves and werewolves. You've got so much choice with warrior nations, and I love it. The Great Eagle, the Thunderbird, the Great Elk, the Raging Bear, Iron Tooth, the legendary Ravenclaw. So many nice looking models, and I just love them all, and that's why Wild West Exodus is the top of my list. Thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you all in the next video. Have a great day. If you wish to save some money on your wargaming, of course hit Warcradle down below for up to 20% off and free delivery after £20. And you can get loads of you can get all the stuff I've mentioned from that link. There's also Forbidden Planet, if you like comics, DVDs, mangas, etc. Really cool. You have my merchandise, t-shirts, cups, bags, stickers, lots of really cool stuff. All of the art is done by me. Some is digital because I was having a bit of fun with, playing around with it, and most of it is actually hand drawn. There's my comics, completely hand drawn, no digital at all in that series. And you either want to see Little Red Riding go ham on some cyborg Lovecraftian werewolves, or you can just read the anthology, which has a very dark story, a bit of a fantasy story, and some teenagers getting brutally murdered by a monster. There's Skyforge, never get Skyforge. He's a fantastic friend of mine, and let's get him up that Google algorithm. And finally, Patreon because business. Bye bye.